This week we are on week 4, and we're looking at chapter 8, and we're looking at theorists Raymond Cattell and Hans Eysenck, and we're going to be looking at some other theorists as well. We just have one chapter this week. So again, looking at Cattell, he was born 1905, 1998 is when he passed away, coming from England, again, one of the earlier pioneers. He had high standards. He was raised under high standards, and he basically had a happy childhood. He found psychology difficult in England and moved to the US. He looked at traits, the reaction tendencies relatively permanent, common traits possessed by all, unique traits possessed by few, and ability traits, skills, and work towards goals. Again, some similar thoughts that we've heard earlier. Cattell's approach to traits. Temperament traits, behavioral style in response to environment. Dynamic traits describe motivations and interests, and surface traits, correlated traits without common factor and sources. So these are the different breakdowns that he had of traits. Source traits are stable and permanent. Constitutional traits, source traits dependent on physiology. Environmental mold traits, source traits learned from social and environmental interactions. So he had 16 different personality factor questionnaire that he developed, and he presented in bipolar form, so two ends of a continuum. So these are the 16 different personality based on the factor questionnaire. So these are the 16 different ones. Okay. Some of you have maybe heard of this, the questionnaire before. So permanent constitutional source traits provide energy for goal-directed behavior, right? Which that's a good thing. Sentiments, environmental mold traits motivate behavior. So these are two forces. Influences of heredity and environment. So interest in relative influences. Similar, he did some twin studies. And intelligence and timidity, highly heritable. So again, like one's own form of thinking, shyness, things that he was saying that this is something that we inherit. So he too had a stage of development, personality stage of development, just like everyone else that we've kind of learned about thus far. And again, you may agree with some of these or not, but these were his 4 thoughts. So his assessment, the L data, life record, the Q data, self-report questionnaires, and the T data, which was derived from personality tests resistant to faking. So there's no way to fake a certain way, kind of like what we've talked about with the MMPI. And the research on Cattell's theory. So the approaches, the effect on one variable on another, the clinical case studies. So he also did dream analysis. And then there was the R and P techniques. R, a lot of data from a lot of people. The P, a lot of data from one person. Reflections on his theories. He was widely respected, more popular in Europe, which is ironic since he left Europe. And trait approach continues to fascinate, right? So some of his stuff is still used. Criticisms. Subjectivity in factor analytic approach, difficult to replicate. Complexity, lack of acceptance, and defended approach as the only one. So again, there's always criticisms. And then behavioral genetics, study of the relationship between genetic or heredity factors and personality traits. Allport, which is who we just learned about, and Cattell among first to suggest role of inherited factors in personality. So kind of pioneers in that area in regards to personality. Now we have the life of Hans Eysenck, born in Germany, immigrated to England from Germany when Hitler came to power, not academically qualified for physics, psychology, a fallback, and long productive career. Dimensions of personality. So you have superfactors, combinations of traits or factors, stable from child to adult. Dimensions. You have extroversion versus introversion, neuroticism versus emotional stability, and psychotism versus impulse control. And so extroversion, so sociable, impulsive, adventurous, dominant, assertive. And some of us, like we know, Introverts and extroverts are different, right? Cortical arousal. So extroverts, lower base level seek excitement. Introverts, higher base level avoid excitement. So they're kind of two opposing forces, right? Mixed research results, some genetic basis is based on what some of his findings. When we look at the way I always describe it to clients is extroverts get their batteries charged from being around people, whereas introverts get their batteries charged being by themselves. There's not one that's right or wrong. It's just a difference, right? A preference difference. Neuroticism, anxious, depressed, tense, irrational, and moody. So the sympathetic system, nervous system, tends to be overacted and largely inherited. Research suggests neurotics work better under stress, which we do know people write that, right? Like the procrastinator. Some of you might be very familiar with that. It's like when the pressure's on, that's when they can do better. And then psychotism, aggressive, antisocial, tough-minded, cold, egocentric people. The parents tend to be authoritarians, controlling. He had various findings with gender, some support for being like potential criminals. So heredity. So compared identical and fraternal twins. Identical twins tend to be more similar. Adoption studies show more similarity with biological parents based on his findings. So now we look at Costa and McCrae, the 5-factor model. Research revealed 5 factors. Again, some of the things that we talked about: extroversion, openness, agreeableness. Okay, some of those factors. Self-observer ratings, objective tests, neo-personality inventory, and all but agreeableness show heritability. Cross-cultural consistency and stability. 5 factors in Eastern and Western cultures. Differences by culture. Stability, childhood to adulthood, early to mild, mid-adulthood. And decreases in neuroticism, adolescence to adult, 40s to 60s. So it goes down, right? And then how things emotionally correlate. Well-being, high extroversion, low neuroticism, high agreeableness, high conscientiousness. Extroversion, social support and positive emotions. And then, the neurotics have like the negative outcomes, right? So he's looking at extroversion as being positive. Behavioral, how things correlate behaviorally. Conscientiousness, better grades and work, increased health, general high predictive value of traits. Agreeableness, fewer behavior problems, some controversy about number of factors. So, and again, I think so still, regardless of what the findings are, I think there's positives and growing areas in every different part of this, because you can be too agreeable, right? So there needs to be some limits to things. Ashton and Lee, so they have the Hexaco 6-factor model. Honesty, humility, sincere, honest, and faithful. Emotionality, emotional, oversensitive, faithful, anxious. Extroversion, outgoing, lively, sociable, cheerful. Agreeableness, tolerant, peaceful, gentle, agreeable. And conscientiousness, disciplined, diligent, thorough, and precise. Openness to experience, creative, innovative, and unconventional. So that's their 6-factor model. So behavioral genetics findings may require research restructuring and caution to avoid rushing to extreme views, right? We don't want to go, it has to be this way or that way. I think in the field of psychology, we're pretty open to things, and we try to not put anything too much in a box. So those are things to be kind of conscientious with. We don't want to be all or nothing or very black and white. And then then the study of genetics and environment, which I definitely think that's kind of like nature versus nurture. We do know environment plays a huge role in how someone behaves. And we also know just some of your inherited traits or inherited parts of yourself affect how your personality is, right? Because we see how children act just like a parent. But then we can also have the discussion, is that because of how they've been raised, or is that because of those are just qualities that are similar, right? You have kids that are, let's say, in a divorce situation who might live with the totally opposite parent but act like the one that they don't live with. And it's almost stunning, but those kinds of things happen. So anyways, I hope you enjoy this chapter. It's kind of nice. It's just one, so it's not an overload of information. I hope this again is helpful. And if you have any further questions, please let me know. Have a great week.